Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Welcome to Business Ninjas. I'm here with David Parker from Underline. Hey, David, how's it going?
I'm well. Thank you, Andy. Good to see you.
You too. Well, let's start by telling me who you are and what you do.
So I'm David Parker. I'm the director of the video library for Underline Science. We are a provider of event services for scholarly communications conferences. And we take those conference presentation videos and aggregate them into a library that we distribute back to university and corporate clients.
That's great. And as companies are looking for your solution, tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that they have as they're out searching for you.
The challenges they have as they're searching for us, or the challenges that we remedy for them as users?
Let's start there. It sounds like that's the natural kind of hook. So, what problems are you solving for companies and educational institutions as your platform works? How does that work? How do you engage with your clients, and what problems are you solving for them?
Yeah. Well, so think about the activities that a researcher undertakes. They deal with a critical question, and they go about finding information, the most current, most cutting edge information that they can get their hands on to resolve those questions. In the good old days when I was in graduate school doing graduate research in the 90s, there weren't video libraries, right? There weren't podcasts, there weren't archives of content that were digitally accessible to the extent they are today. Mostly what we relied on was books and journal articles in the library. But the research life cycle begins with a dissertation or a thesis that an academic writes on their way to their accreditation, proceeds from there to conferences where they do poster sessions and conference presentations to research that they have in progress. And that leads further through the process of refinement into journal articles and scholarly monographs, books, what have you. Prior to Underline Science coming along, those poster sessions that were happening at conferences and those presentations where the speakers would stand up and talk about their research and field questions from the attendees, nobody was capturing that. So it was disappearing. This metaphor of visual metaphor of a janitor sweeping up the posters from an academic poster session is a good way to think about it.
Yeah, so like it would just happen in the moment, and then once it's over, and nobody archived it.
Correct. Ephemeral early research is the sort of official way you would hear a academic or scholarly communication thinker talk about it.
I see. And so you're building this archive for these events so that they can have a place to live ongoing. Who are the consumers of that content once you archive it, and how are companies using that content beyond the archive at that point?
Yeah, so the great thing about what we do, and unlike any of the other competitors in our space, is our business has a two-pronged approach. The first approach is we support the events themselves. So we come in with a team and give you whatever level of support you need to put on an academic conference. Then the other part of our business is to take the output of that conference, those scholarly video presentations recorded in video, curate and aggregate them, and then serve them back to you, the institution or the organization that supported the event, so your researchers can engage with that content long-term, alongside the journal articles they've written, the books they've written, all in one place, provided through your society. So that's the core, service we provide back to the scholarly research community. But we also take all of that content from every one of the events we do. We're coming close to 300 we've done in the last 2 years, plus content from events that other companies have supported. And we place that into a curated, aggregated collection of many hundreds of academic events, serve it back to institutions, university libraries, and corporate libraries. And back to my earlier description of what a researcher does, they need to get their hands on the best cutting edge information in their topic of inquiry. And by having this video library of all of these scholarly conference presentations, we're significantly enriching the pot of content that they have access to, from early research that was ephemeral all the way through vetted, published, peer-reviewed articles and journal articles and scholarly monographs.
Very cool. I love it. Yeah, it's such an important part of the life cycle of research, and giving that new shelf life and a place to live really is I see what you mean by enriching the data that's out there. How does a company generate revenue? What's your business model?
Yeah, so great question. The first way, of course, is through the events we support. Mm-hmm. Depending on the level of support an association or a society needs, we offer different levels of service, and each one of those levels of service, of course, comes with different fees and associated mechanisms for us to generate revenue in return for providing value, all the way through full service conference support. The other way, and the part that I'm primarily responsible for, is the distribution of that curated, aggregated library, right? That is inclusive of our content and many, many, many other society and association content sources that we license in. And we sell that on a subscription basis to institutions.
I see. Very cool. And are they taking those videos and putting them on YouTube, or are they just hosted internally on their websites through username and password kind of a thing? Or how's the end user consuming these videos?
Well, that's a key part of the value that we add, because in scholarly communications, open has been an ever-growing part of the terrain we operate in, meaning that the scholarly research community is looking for content to be open access, freely available. So to some degree, some percentage of the content is freely available. The problem with freely available video typically is it sits on a place like YouTube, like you mentioned. It's not enriched at all. There is no transcript. In other words, there's no way to narrowly or finitely search that content. There's no disaggregation of the assets that might be part of that video. In other words, if you stand up and give a scholarly presentation and speak to a set of PowerPoint slides, that video recording is not going to disaggregate those PowerPoint slides and turn those into metadata. So beyond the enriching the content through transcripts, deep metadata enrichment of all the assets within the presentation, we also assign what are called digital object identifiers, which are persistent links back to the content that exists in the research record. We offer multi-language translation service on the content. We offer abstracting and indexing of the content. And then we also place it in our platform in an environment where scholars can communicate and converse around the content, have an ongoing dialogue, right? As you might imagine happens with academics debating your opinion, your scholarly output, your research.
Sure, fascinating. It's really cool. So everybody wants to know how do people grow companies? This is one of the biggest topics of it's sort of like business self-help on the internet. People are just curious to know how our company is growing. How have you grown the company? What are some drivers of growth for you, and what have been some areas of success for you?
Well, our founder, Alex Lazanika, is an AI robotics professor of some renown who started the world's first open access scholarly monograph book publisher, with now more than 5,000 open access scholarly monographs published. He also launched a gourmet burger chain in Europe. So the guy's multifaceted, multi-talented guy. He had the original idea as a scholar for Underline science, having been at conferences and seen that ephemera disappear. So he set up the business initially with getting that library built through going out and recording and capturing these scholarly presentations. And this was mid 2019, late 2019. Coronavirus hit in early 2020. And the need for these scholarly societies and associations to capture their content or present their content, pardon me, through hybrid and virtual events obviously boomed. So for the next 2+ years, that's really what we focused on. We really moved the business hard to supporting that particular context, which built up our library. And so now the focus is on the commercialization of that library and the growth of that library. But the way we grow our business is by focusing on particular end user segments. So I mentioned institutional academic customers, institutional corporate researchers, but there's also individual consumers, right? Scholars, researchers, academics that want to consume on a B2C basis. So by being able to approach the multi-channel distribution of streaming video content based on customer segments, we're able to grow our market both by customer segment, business to business, business to consumer, but also through segments in corporate and in non-governmental and in academic, and globally through differentiated pricing models that work at scale for different capacities to purchase.
Love that. That's great. That was you answered some of my questions about who are your buyers and who's your buyer persona. So that's really interesting because you have to know who you're talking to when you're doing any kind of growth marketing. And so tell me a little bit about what channels are most effective for you. Obviously content is core to what you're doing. How's content marketing around the content working for you, or how's that added value for the company? As a content marketing company ourselves, we're always interested in those kinds of insights.
Yeah, well, if researchers don't value our content, we're dead, right? We don't have a product.
Yeah.
Now, those researchers are typically not the buyer.
Yeah.
Typically, the buyer is a scholarly research librarian, a curator, aggregator of research and databases at the institution, be it corporate or academic. But the critical importance for us of content marketing and marketing in general, even old school, pick up the phone and call somebody or email them, right? It is aimed at faculty. And the focus we take is, we don't want to be cute or tricky about it. We just want to put really good content in front of those researchers. And if they value it, they're going to go and tell the buyers in their institutions to pay for it, right? So most of our content marketing revolves around taking the content from our platform, showing how it's enriched, showing how it fits in their particular discipline or their particular field. And then once that has proven its worth to them, asking them to do advocacy. But generally we don't have to ask because they say, hey man, this is great. How do I get it? We say, oh, well, you got to go tell your institutional purchaser about our access models. And by the way, in the end, it's better for all the researchers on the campus or in the corporate location because our business models are such that the pricing works around unlimited access, unrestricted access to anyone who's institutionally authenticated. So the cost per use ends up becoming really affordable as compared to pushing it at one particular user.
It's a great way to look at it. Yeah, thank you. So David, if somebody wanted to find you, how do they find you? How do they find the company and how do they get in touch?
Underline.io. That's our website.
Wonderful. Simple.
And we're on, of course, all the socials.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, David. This has been fantastic. Really enjoyed it. Good luck to you. And here's to more growth.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.